Hey guys, my name's Alex Barham, and I'm just doing a quick recap after my first weekend in the new Werner paddle for 2015, the Surge. This is Werner's first fiberglass offset paddle, which means that it has a forward bend in the blade, which makes the blade further forward in your stroke than the shaft. Alright? Previously, they had the Odachi, and it's really natural to just say, oh, this paddle is going to be a fiberglass Odachi, especially because that's what the Powerhouse and the Sherpa are. They have equivalents in carbon with foam core, which are the Powerhouse and, the Shogun and the Stikine. This really doesn't equate. There are a lot of reasons, but definitely the biggest for me is that the shape actually isn't a Odachi shape. Up here, yeah, it's an Odachi, but this curve down here, you're going to recognize from the existing Werner whitewater line. So it kind of steals a little bit from both paddles. And then additionally, it's not exactly the same size as anything else. It's a little bit bigger than a Powerhouse, and I think that's basically what it's closest to. It's not as tall as an Odachi. It's kind of got its own thing going. The biggest difference, though, is that the back of the paddle looks exactly like any other fiberglass Werner paddle. That means that unlike the Odachi, which kind of had a weaker backstroke than forward stroke, it really does. This paddle actually has a super solid backstroke, which I wasn't expecting. When I paddle an Odachi, my strokes are super vertical, and I'm trying to plan out and make sure that I don't have to do any back sweeps, because I'll have to overdo it to kind of make up for the difference. This blade has a super strong backstroke. It's right there when you need it, and it's fantastic. Now, what's the difference? Why would you be looking at one of these versus a traditional Powerhouse? Interesting question. Because you're moving the blade forward, a lot of the power distribution and where your stroke is relative to your body and where it is positioned on the boat actually changes. So you'll find that you're able to take quicker strokes further forward on the boat, that your boofs kind of change in how you do them, and if you do it right, you get launched out of boofs in a completely different way that you may or may not with another paddle. Now, there's also a downside to that, right? When you flutter the paddle to feather, you're going to notice a real difference. And it's definitely there, but if you think about using this paddle as always using the blade forward, as in you're trying to pull with the scoop instead of push back, it really comes to life. You have a ton of power. How much power? This is going to be like which 9-foot race boat's faster. I really think that it's similar in power to the Odachi or the Shogun. I think it's somewhere right between the two of them, which means it's a very strong paddle. Now, the real difference here, though, is basically going to be your price point. You can get into one of these for a fiberglass price, not a carbon foam core price. And that just comes down to the amount of work it takes to make one of those carbon foam cores. Now, there's a downside. I've already started taking the edge off of this blade because it doesn't have Dynel in the edge, which keeps it at the same pristine shape until it finally breaks. And that normally takes me a long time. Whereas, every time I go paddling with a fiberglass blade, its shape is actually going to be a little different. Long term, what's the best buy going to be? Well, it's going to come down to you. This weekend, it was low water, and I was shattering this demo all over the place. There are definitely dings out of the blade. So if you were really focused on high-performance racing, you're still going to want an Odachi. If for no other reason, then that blade is always going to have the same shape, and it's going to be larger, it's going to have more power. That said, if you are the kind of person who has a Powerhouse, is predominantly creaking or racing, or doing things that don't involve play boating, this could really be a solid option for you at a great price to have a lot more power in the flats, going straight, more power in your booth, and it's really going to change the way that you look at your strokes. That said, you're going to have to give up on kind of some of your back braces or your low braces and your backstrokes and some of the things like that, and you're really going to have to plan out how you paddle a little differently. I definitely found myself doing a little bit of beatering with the changeover because those are all Shoguns. Shoguns are a huge part of my gear bag. I change boats all the time. The one thing I never change is my Shoguns. They're either bent or straight. They're always 30 degrees, 197 long. That's a huge just thing to me. So going to something different was super weird. I can't deny that. But I still, like I said, I think this is a great paddle for the price point. Now, before I go, if something changes, I will be dropping a suggestion up in the top of the screen and follow that to see, if I've evolved at all in my thoughts on this paddle. Finally, it should be clear, if not already, me being surrounded by Werner paddles, that both Mountain Man and myself have a relationship with Werner. I am not a fully fledged Werner athlete. Half of these paddles are to shops, half of them have been given to me on Pro Deal, but it should be known that I'm not a fully unbiased source in the way that I usually am when it comes to reviewing boats. So, if you want to take this with a grain of salt, you have every right to. Thanks, guys!